Today we're doing the rear brakes on a Mercedes-Benz 2008 CLS 550. What I've done over here is I have put some rags around the brake fluid reservoir and loosened the cap, so in case any brake fluid comes out when I compress the calipers on the rear calipers, so that those rags will be there to catch any overflow in case any comes out. For today's brake change, I'm using parts from partsgeek.com. I like to do the Parts Geek Axle Pack. It provides you with all the parts, hardware, and fittings that you need to do a complete brake change. These are a middle to high-end rotor from Centric and brake pad set. I've had really good luck with these. They're very affordable and they come with the axle pack. The rear brake calipers and rotor on the CLS 550. This is a free-floating type caliper, so there's two pins back here that we're going to take out that the caliper floats on, and then this spring clip keeps everything tight on this side. In this rotor, the emergency brake is incorporated into the rotor, and you'll see that once we pull the rotor off. The first thing we're going to take off is the spring clip. This spring clip presses against the bracket, and there's a tongue inside that catches on a lip inside of the caliper. So the best way to get that off of there is to insert a small screwdriver and just pop that off of the lip, and then it comes out fairly easy. Now this caliper floats on two pins. There's one here at the top and one at the bottom, and that is held in by a T40 Torx. So I'm going to take that out now. Okay, the top pin is loose, and now I'm going to back out the bottom pin. Like the front brakes, the rear brake on the passenger side has a brake wear sensor, and we're going to replace this sensor in the course of the brake change today. Now both pins are loose. I've disconnected the brake sensor, and now I'm just going to ease the caliper off of the bracket. The rear inside brake pad with the sensor just pops out, and there's the brake wear sensor in the pad, and we'll put a new sensor in the new pads. Now normally I don't let brake calipers hang from their hoses or wires because there's a chance you can do damage, but in this case this is so light there's no weight to it at all. I'm just going to let it hang there, and here I'm going to pull the pins out, and you can see what the pins look like that the brake caliper guides on. Next piece we're going to take off is the bracket, and that's an 18mm socket. I like to use a swivel head because it's a little tight in the back and it makes it a lot easier to get it off. Okay, I'm going to take off the top bolt on the bracket. They're not very tight. Okay, I've got the bottom bolt off, and I'm just taking out the top bolt now. There's the top bolt, and then the bracket just comes right off. Okay, the next thing to take off in order to remove the rotor is to remove the set screw. That's held in by a 30 Torx set screw, and I use an impact driver to get that out. The set screws can sometimes be hard to get out, but if you have an impact driver, it makes pretty short work of it. There's the set screw. I always replace these because the new screws are cheap, and it's better to have a new one in there, and the new screws come with Loctite already on them. And then once the set screw is removed, the rotor just slides right off. And there's the hub. I like to clean the brake hubs off with a wire wheel, and you can see here on the rear brakes the emergency brake is incorporated into the rear brake hub. This is a 2008, but since this hardly ever gets used at all, the pads are in very good condition. I'm just going to clean them up with brake cleaner and leave them alone. We got the hub wire wheeled off, and I'm just going to give it a good dose of brake cleaner to get everything cleaned off there. Okay, now that the hub's all wire wheeled and cleaned and brake cleanered, I'm going to put some anti-seize on it. This is a Permatex general purpose anti-seize that I got from the auto parts store. Just give that a nice coating, and that will keep those parts fresh and make it easier to take the caliper off years from now when you go back to do this job again. We've got the new centric caliper ready to go on. I want to give it a good dose of brake cleaner to get all of the oil preservative off of it and make sure that that's not on there, because of course you don't want the brand new brake pads getting oily from the preservative that the caliper came with. So just make sure that that's clean on both sides, and especially inside where the emergency brake pad grips. Okay, I've got a new set screw from Parts Geek. You can see it's already got the anti-seize on it. I always replace these as a general rule with every brake job. Torque the set screw in, not too tight, but good enough, and that's the rotor installed. The next thing we're going to do is make this bracket ready to be installed, but as you can see here, this bracket is filthy. I'm going to clean this with a wire wheel down to clean bare metal and pay special attention to these sliding surfaces here and here, because that's where the brake pads action back and forth. I want to make sure that these surfaces are very, very clean, they've been deburred with a file, and that they're down to nice smooth bare metal, and I'll lubricate those with brake lubricant. I've got the bracket wire wheeled off. I'm just going to clean it up with a little brake cleaner, make sure everything's good and clean, and then we're going to take a look at the sliding surfaces. I got everything pretty well cleaned here. You can see on the sliding surfaces for the brake pads, there's a little bit of wear right there. I'm just going to take some emery cloth and clean those surfaces up. I've cleaned these up with sandpaper. I can still see there's a little bit of burrs on these sliding surfaces, so I'm going to take a flat file and just smooth those out a little bit. Take the extra time to do this. Make sure your brackets are good and cleaned and deburred. These are your brakes, you know, this is your safety, so you want to make sure that all of these parts are functioning well. And it just takes a little bit of effort to make sure everything's good and clean and smooth. The bracket's all cleaned up and ready to go. I'm going to lubricate the slides here with some ceramic brake lubricant. Cleaned and lubricated bracket is ready to go on. I'm going to put a little bit of Loctite blue on the bolts. This is the top bolt, and then we will reinstall this bracket. Got the bottom bolt ready to go in. It's got some Loctite blue in it, and that just goes in down here. The bracket is now installed and torqued, and the next thing we're going to work on is the hydraulic caliper itself. Next thing we're going to do, you can see that the cylinder is out a little bit because the brakes were pretty worn. So I have this tool here to recompress the cylinder back into the caliper. It does a pretty good job. I think I got this off of Amazon for just a couple of bucks. Well worth the investment. There, now the cylinder is completely compressed, and we will be able to easily install the new, much thicker brake pads. The pins that this caliper slides on sit inside of this rubber boot. The axle pack gives you brand new rubber boots, so I'm going to replace these, and the best way to take them out is just with a pair of channel locks and just pull them right out, just like that. Here are the old rubber boots. I have new ones to put in, and I'll put a little Vaseline petroleum jelly on those so that they go in easy. These are the new rubber boots that come with the axle pack. I'm going to lubricate the part that goes inside of the caliper with just a little bit of Vaseline petroleum jelly, and they push right through. They're fairly easy to install. And just push these through. They installed good. The flange is on the inside, and these are the new rubber boots that the sliding pins will be encased in. These are the two sliding pins that go in with the Torx 40. They're a little bit not corroded, but they're dirty. I want to make sure that these are very clean. So I'm going to clean these up with emery cloth, and I'm going to put some anti-seize on them before I put them in back into the rebuilt brake system here. I'm just cleaning these off with some emery cloth. You don't really want to take any metal off. Just make sure they're nice and clean, and then we'll anti-seize these up for installation. Just put a nice coat of anti-seize on the pins. And since this is really the only thing that the brake system is sliding on, I want to put a spot of Loctite blue on the threads before we install it back into the caliper. This is the inside caliper. This is the one that clips into the hydraulic cylinder in the caliper itself, and this is also the one that gets the brake wear sensor. The brake wear sensor just slides into this slot, right into this hole here. That's it. Then it's in. These clips here have to go inside the hole in the hydraulic cylinder in the caliper. It takes a little bit of effort to push those in. You're going to have to push them pretty hard. It's a little bit fiddly, but they do go. There we go. This is the outside brake pad, new brake pad, and this one has to go into the slot here before we can set the caliper over on top of the bracket, and that just sits in there like so. Now we're going to slide the caliper with the new brake pads over the rotor into place. I've already got one pin positioned here, and I'm going to take my ratchet with a Torx 40 and just run that in. Prepare the bottom pin. Just give it a good coating of anti-seize lubricant on the sliding surface there. Make sure that's covered well. And then I also want to put some Loctite blue on the threads. The pins are torqued, so got the new brake pads installed, pins are tight, brackets tight, and all we have to do now is install the plug for the new brake pad sensor, and that just plugs straight in. You can see it right here. New boots that we just installed in the caliper, they come with, when you get the axle pack, they give you some caps that go into the end of those boots. The old ones didn't have any caps in them, but we're going to install these caps in the ends of the rubber boots. The last and final step is to install the spring clip. It's a little bit fiddly. You have to kind of finesse it in there. Use a screwdriver to make sure that it's well seated and that the little lips inside are caught well on the space that's provided in there for them to lock into. This one looks good. The last thing I like to do is give everything a little dust off with brake cleaner. Make sure I haven't touch the caliper anywhere that's going to get oil on the rotor or the brand new brake pads. Everything's installed, well lubricated and connected, and that's it. Always make sure you use jack stands under your car for an added measure of safety. We use a 1.5 ton roller jack for the lifting point on the Mercedes. It's got a very specialized lifting point. This car is a unibody, so make sure that you put the jack on the space that's provided, and always use a jack stand for an extra measure of safety.